Well, boys, looks like you started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't blow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
All right, let's do it.
What the fuck is up? I am Michael. I am here with Eric.
Yo.
And today on Double Feature, we are doing Rocky 3 and Kill Bill in the third installment of Punch, Punch, Stab, Stab, Asian Philadelphian Adventure. What are we going to do to these movies, Eric?
Asian Philadelphian Adventure. We're going to spoil the movies. So we're going to get right to it because, to be honest with you, there is more Tarantino than I thought I'd want to cover. And I would not dare deprive you of our Asian adventure because that's just as important, if not more, than the Tarantino that needs to get covered. Also, there's this thing called Rocky 3.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing. We're going to spoil the movies. If you are just tuning in because you just showed up for Kill Bill, I totally get that. You've been skipping out on the other ones. Does not matter. Don't start with Rocky 3. Go ahead and start with Rocky 1 or use the chapters to skip. Honestly, just skip this time. You're not going to miss anything in the conversation of Rocky 3. Only if you've seen the other Rockies and care about that will you. This is not the episode where I'm going to convince you to watch Rocky. So use chapters, and other things to move on to, I guess, is Rocky 3.
Yeah, that is number one on the agenda.
Number one hit on the agenda is Eye of the Tiger. Have you ever heard the song Eye of the Tiger? I don't know if you're paying close attention to this film. You might have noticed it play.
It sounds familiar. What is that in reference to?
Eye of the Tiger is an eyeball that's inside the tiger.
Okay.
See, the tiger looks fierce, rawr, he gets his opponent.
And so he needs to get angry in order to defeat his opponent in this film.
Okay, so while on the other two Rocky movies, they're really probably my favorite of the two Rocky movies.
Yeah.
All the Rocky movies do their own special thing.
It's more like Eye of the Sad Rhino, the first two movies.
I'm just saying, they're all great. They all do different things.
Uh-huh.
The thing that this movie does is create notable pop culture.
Okay.
One is Eye of the Tiger, which is probably the most pop. It's
surprising because Eye of the Tiger, for me and for just about everybody, I think on the planet, is something that people associate with Rocky. And it's bizarre to me that it takes till the third movie for Eye of the Tiger to show up.
Right.
Because I always assumed Eye of the Tiger was the thing that happened in Rocky.
Oh, yeah, no. That's the Rocky theme. So now we have the Rocky theme, the soft Rocky theme, and Eye of the Tiger.
We also have Rocky theme in-game, which I guess we'll talk about later.
Oh, yeah, within the universe itself. No, fuck it. It came up. Let's talk about it now. The only thing I wanted to say about Eye of the Tiger,
please,
is that Stallone commissioned that from the band.
Wow.
What is that, Survivor? Who does that?
I don't know.
Something
like that.
Use iTunes. Find out.
So we have Rocky theme in-game, which is...
what does that mean?
Which is this thing that I kind of noticed happening a little bit in the second film, but really came to fruition in the third Rocky movie.
Sure.
Where it seems like the universe of Rocky, within the universe of Rocky, they are aware of the Rocky universe. They're aware of the score that happens while Rocky's training. They're aware of the pose when he gets to the top of the stairs. They're aware of there's a Rocky pinball game, right?
Yeah.
It's almost as if there are subsequent documentaries covering exactly the same thing we're seeing in the Rocky films, down to camera angles, down to score, only they're supposed to be taken as nonfiction, and we all see them as fiction.
So what you're saying is the universe itself may be aware of the Rocky franchise?
It may be that the Rocky universe is self-aware.
I never thought about that when watching these movies, although I did remember... when the marching band
plays the Rocky theme.
Yeah, that was a little weird. And so, we've been dealing with some wrestling stuff in this movie.
Yeah.
A lot of different...
One big wrestling stuff.
Well, so there's the Hulk Hogan wrestling match. In a second.
Sure.
I promise.
Okay.
But, wrestlers have theme music. I don't know. It's possible that they're playing the Rocky. Look, there's plenty of excuses, but I love the idea that... within the Rocky universe, maybe there's an alternate version of the Rocky movies that are, say, documentaries, like you said, and that everybody's seen them. They know the poses. They know the joke about the boxing shorts being the wrong color.
Yep.
They know all of that, and that it has become self-aware. It was in this day on Rocky 3 that the Rocky universe became self-aware. So, I don't know. Fuck it. All right, let's talk about wrestling. Let's just go with that next.
So, there's this awesome match where they do kind of it's a charity match, right? Where Rocky fights Hulk Hogan. And Hulk Hogan isn't a boxer.
No.
Hulk Hogan is what's his name? Sexy Lips?
Wrestler. Thunder
Lips. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And he's a wrestler, and he breaks Rocky's back over his knee in true WCW fashion. WWF, WWE. I don't know what was going on in 1980, whenever the fuck, but...
It was probably WWF at that time. I don't know. That's the 80s. Yeah, I have no idea. Not like if it were in the last 20 minutes, I would even know.
That's true.
But in the 80s,
UFC.
I mean, there you go. That's something where people punch each other in the ear. What I do know is that now we're getting the spectacle that we were, talking about in the first movie.
Sure.
The one Apollo Creed thought he was walking into.
Yeah.
Where I'm just going to show up in a George Washington wig and, ride out here and make a big, it's a farce.
Yeah.
And it turned out not to be a farce. It started its own franchise. I was going to say, fortunately, this didn't start its own franchise, but I guess it did. It was Hulk Hogan, right?
Yeah,
so
it became Hulk Hogan, Hulkamania,
talk
right?
about self-aware.
Yeah.
This movie did start the Hulk Hogan franchise.
It's not the only one it started, but that should be probably the last thing we cover.
So we see this match with Hulk Hogan, and, he goes on to have this big, explosive wrestling career. Not that he didn't wrestle before this.
Right.
But I mean, he's in Rocky, and now he's a household name.
Sure.
The other thing that's important to our characters here is this is the first time we see Adrian at a match.
Yeah.
Suddenly she's not watching from home anymore.
And it's all kind of done in this weird, brief Rocky's a Star montage.
Yeah.
In the beginning of the film, which caught me really off guard, and I wasn't really on board with. But
you weren't on board with the montage?
No, but I've learned to just take the Rocky films as at face value, let them do what they're going to do. And instead of going, here's what you should have done, Rocky 3, I instead watch Rocky 3 and evaluate it as Rocky 3.
Sounds familiar from our film noir conversation previously. Yeah, I mean, we're 3 movies in now, and you notice that all 3 movies have started with the match from the previous movie.
Right. It's almost a previously on Rocky.
Wonder if that's going to continue. But in telling the story of this fighter, we're in a very interesting place in the franchise now. We've gone through that underdog story. We've gone through the, the rightful victory and really earning that. And now we're, you're talking about a success montage.
Sure.
This is something that's needed to tell the story, really. It's showing you, look, he's actually winning all these fights. He's the undisputed people's champion.
Sure.
He's got the belt or whatever boxing
Golden
does with that.
Bronze gloves.
At any rate, he's achieved success, and that's what's important. And when you visit Rocky and Adrian in their home, aside from having a kid, which I just keep forgetting that...
Not only does he have a kid, but he becomes an adept storyteller. Able to not only tell stories, but explain them while telling them.
Oh, man. Those are great scenes. It replaces the Adrian joke scenes.
Yeah, it does.
Now, he and Adrian are... they know each other very, very well, right? They've completely filled the gaps that they were talking about before. And now he has a son that we can once again go back to Rocky's being goofy mechanics. Never wears on me. It's a great part of that Rocky character. You wouldn't want to lose that just because he and Adrian start to get along so well.
Especially not in the 80s.
Oh, God, of course not. But when you get to their home, they are millionaires. I mean, they seem to have everything.
Golf carts?
Golf carts, for instance. When you need, first of all, if you need to move around your home in a golf cart, too big. Secondly, at the point you buy your own golf cart, but don't golf, I mean, that's when you have so much money you don't know what to do with. I really don't buy into the idea of you have so much money you can throw it away or that you won't miss it or all of these anti-capitalism things people say. Anytime you lose any money on something that probably wasn't a good idea, it sucks.
Yeah.
But when you buy a golf cart to get around in your home, that's probably the point where if you woke up one day and had, well, let's say $2,000 less, you wouldn't even notice it was gone. Perhaps $2,000 lost in the... I don't know what a golf cart costs. I assume $2,000. I don't know why.
I don't golf.
But then again, if your home's that big and you're a boxing champion, you can't just be walking from place to place and getting exercise. So to avoid being obscene, you get a golf cart to travel around your home. So this is the polar opposite of the first film. I mean, you couldn't get further away from Rocky's roots and who he was.
Could. And that would be if Rocky became a pompous dick.
Sure. So maybe it's the furthest you can go with that character.
Right.
But that's what I really like about this story being unique, not just for the franchise, but compared to other stories telling this kind of arc here. He has become the very figure of success that he was fighting to be. He wanted to achieve success. He has now achieved that really to the point where he's become the example of success.
Sure. He's taken it to the degree, the end of the line. As successful as one can be, Rocky Balboa now is.
But what makes this a unique version of this tale of success is that he hasn't become, everything he hates.
Right.
A lot of times when you're telling a story like this, you show that the character, man, they're not even recognizable as who they used to be, and now they're the very thing they were fighting against.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that Rocky was ever fighting against anything but his situation.
Right.
It seemed like he was fighting to get out of the slums and to be successful. It's not like he was fighting capitalism or something.
Mm-hmm.
And Rocky and Adrian, they're talking in bed when you first see them in their house about how they've made it. And as it pulls out and you look at that house a little bit, even just seeing them laying in that bed, they are in a bajillion-dollar home.
Right.
Or the scenes where they're eating at the table.
Uh-huh.
It's almost the comical. Remember in Dark City where they change all the houses and they change one from a working class tiny table to a long...
Right.
It's that shit. It's ridiculous. So we need some obstacles for Rocky to overcome in order to have any story to tell.
Sure.
And we might know that, all right, our end goal here, get Rocky back in touch with his roots. That's the story we're interested in telling. But how do we do that? So we get a couple obstacles in his way here.
Big obstacles.
And, there's a small one too. There's Paulie's alcoholism. I found it interesting that the film brought that back up and then brushed it back under the rug.
Yeah.
Like this might be what we're telling us to up. No, don't worry about that.
So
Paulie just drinks.
it was a real shocker to me to see that he fell off the snow cone wagon. He was back on the hard stuff.
Oh yeah, I just realized that's a big revelation for you at this point. Turns out snow cones didn't do it. I'd also like to congratulate you. I banned you from talking about snow cones, and it's been months, really, probably since the last Rocky show that you have mentioned snow cones. So
Trying
thanks.
really hard
To kick the talking about snow cones
Yeah,
habit.
I picked up alcoholism in lieu of talking about snow cones.
Oh, Christ. So the big event that's changed Rocky's life and calls a lot of things into question is Mick's death. Mickey dies. And, we get some time to spend with that character before he dies.
Right.
Which is a great choice of the film.
Yeah.
Not to just start the film with, he died and how we're going to deal with that. You get some really... you start to see how Mick reacts to the spectacle that Rocky's built. It never gets more apparent than when he's watching bubbles float by.
Yeah.
And he has this moment like, how the fuck did I get here?
Yep.
He tells Rocky, we have to go back to the shitty boxing place.
Yep.
I can't deal with all the streamers and the confetti falling from the sky and all the people.
And the DJ.
And Mickey dies, really, the movie sort of frames it as at the hands of Mr. T.
Right. At the hands of Clubber.
Good old Clubs, who has been a worthy opponent of Rocky for 3 whole films now. And, oh no, wait, what's that? Came out of nowhere and was just a total jackass.
Well,
for no
I don't
reason.
know if maybe you don't remember this, but in the opening montage, he was very angry.
Yeah.
For almost the entirety of that montage.
Oh,
and
yeah, you're
furthermore, equally angry during the fight with Thunder Lips.
Oh, he was very mad about that fight. I do remember that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that was only about 4.5 minutes of this film. So, but it's fine. I get that. And the movie wasn't trying to tell us. It's not Nicky and Pauling the character in here and saying, he's been here this whole time. He's always in the crowd. You just didn't see him. Although that would be just as ridiculous as anything this character does. And, I guess Adrian points out later, she has that heated debate with Rocky when they're out on the beach training.
When they're
and stuff.
out on the beach.
Yeah, they get in this big screaming match, and she points out that Mickey knew what he was doing, and he's a grown man, and Mr. T didn't actually kill him,
right,
or club him to death, as it were. He collapses, and that might have happened at any point, but it does set the guy up as more of a villain.
Sure.
And it also means that Rocky needs a new trainer.
Right.
So in the place that Mick used to take comes Apollo Creed.
You're talking about the place that Mick used to take being on a sunny Californian beach?
I was thinking more of the dimly lit conspiracy scene than the sunny beach.
Sure.
Well, let's talk about those two sides of Apollo Creed that we learn about. We get a lot more about his character. And this is about the point where I really start to love Apollo Creed, but also question the choices made by the filmmakers of Apollo Creed. Or maybe Apollo Creed's own motivations. Yeah. Maybe that's really what should be called into question here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's that scene where Apollo presents his plan to Rocky. It's totally the backroom, shady deal scene that we talked about in The Killing and being from Dr. Strangelove, a lot of that Kubrick stuff. The Killing's just been coming up all over the fucking place lately. But it's very little light, and these two guys, they're conspiring. I mean, they are hatching a plan.
Right.
And in order to make that plan seem more crazy, we give it conspiracy lighting.
Right.
They're talking in a dimly lit... Oh man, and that's what he says as soon as he gets in
Sure.
there. Oh, what if the press knew that we were talking like this?
Yeah.
As if they're hatching. So what are they saying? Oh, I should train you?
What they're saying is, I'm going to train you, but you got to do something for me later.
Oh, you mean the hamster favor?
Yes.
Let's just drop that casually right in here and then not mention it until it's important at the very end of our conversation.
But somewhere between now and the $1 Million Hotel,
Yeah.
we need to run up a sunny beach in slow motion together and then hug in the surf.
All right. So seriously, this is more juvenile than we usually cover.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, exceptional cases,
Yep.
notability. This is easily the most unintentionally gay scene in all of double feature history.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I'm wondering if you have any contenders for, well, maybe not even unintentional. We might have to go just, is there anything full out more gay than this scene?
The only thing, and I'm going to go way back here. I'm going to
Uh-huh.
make this proposal to you.
Sure.
The majority of autofocus.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Okay. That's true. I was going to maybe go the Rocky Horror
Yeah,
route.
that's a good
but
one, too.
I don't even know that Rocky Horror is that gay. You know what it was? Sleepaway Camp, where the two dudes are fucking. That would be slightly, that would be somewhere as close to as gay as this beach scene.
Uh-huh.
They're splish splashing. They're wearing their short shorts. I'm actually talking about Rocky. This sounds like I'm setting up a
Yep.
gag to say blah, blah, Sleepaway Camp, but this is Rocky 3 I'm
Yeah.
talking about here. And they're friends. And I get it. They're buddies, but something about what they're wearing and the 80s.
And the secret favor.
You're not supposed to talk about the secret favorite till the end.
I'm sorry.
But I guess Sleepaway Camp did have its unintentionally gay moments too. Remember when we talked about the first one?
Mm-hmm.
And it being the 80s and everybody's laughing and playing and have a good time. But the thing that's weird about this is I also get what they're doing with the story.
Sure.
I also realize they're best of buds.
Mhm.
They are such good buds that they can run up and down on the beach and act completely gay with one another, and they don't care how I'm judging them.
Their wife's not even jealous.
No, but she gets pissed. She gets very upset. It's weird to see them yell at each other
Yeah.
like this. It's, I mean, it's almost the kind of scenes that Paulie caused way back in the first one. But, you know, that's a great point to talk about Rocky's actual story arc. Because up until then, you don't, I mean, this is all locked away in his head. You don't really know what's fucking with him so much. You don't know what he's really that upset about.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he's worried about, I think, two things. He's worried about his legacy and he's worried about his skill. You know, he's got a fucking statue at this point.
Right.
He has built this name for himself. And while he has all the, you know, the fancy house and car and all that stuff, what he's worried about is that name living up to his fucking statue.
Sure.
It's no accident that there's a goddamn statue
Right.
they unveil.
Pinball machine.
Yeah, and you know, before, as he points out, he had nothing to lose. Now he has that notoriety, and he, you know, he doesn't want to go out having been publicly challenged by some asshole and then not being able to beat him.
Right.
But there's that other thing too. The what if I can't do this anymore?
Yeah.
The I'm getting older, and what if I just don't have it in me? That's kind of what Eye of the Tiger is about. I mean, that's also, you know, it's a training song, and it's about being fierce and getting into the mindset of being able to just kick everybody's ass and whatever.
Right.
But as Apollo Creed points out, when he was younger, he had that fucking look in his eye where he wanted this, and he was going to destroy everything.
Yep.
And now he just kind of just phones it in.
Yep.
And he's questioning, you know, because of how these fights were set up, whether he really won them or if he has that skill. This is, I mean, this sounds like something out of Sideways.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this sounds like midlife crisis territory. What if I'm not a good writer anymore? What if I don't have it? I should, you know, go on a journey with my best friend to learn about myself. You see what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
If we were having a Rocky adventure, like an Asian Extreme adventure, we might put Sideways after Rocky 3.
I would never put Sideways after Rocky 3.
It's funny that the focus gets softer as time goes on. Let's talk about Mr. T. Everybody gets the fear thing. I just wanna hate Mr. T for a second.
Mr. T sucks. Mr. T is awful. What's the guy's Clubber Johnson, Jackson?
We've been calling
Jimmy?
him. I've been calling him Mr. T. I don't actually hate Mr. T. Maybe I do, but that's not what I want to address here. What I want to address is his character,
Yeah.
who's an asshole. And I guess this movie kind of made Mr. T. It was before the A-Team.
Yeah.
You know,
This movie, this was the film where it was credited as introducing Mr. T as Clubber Johns, Samson.
Just keep going with it.
I don't remember.
Clubber Sam.
I just hated him so much.
What's his stupid catchphrase?
I pity the fool.
Yeah, so
or
he-
sucka.
Do you think that started in Rocky 3?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
He said
great.
it in Rocky 3.
Well, I don't know if maybe he had some obscure
Unless he
thing
had a
where-
cereal before he had
right.
his role in Rocky 3.
Yeah, I don't like people who have catchphrases. That's all it comes down to for me. But this character is, he's not a character. He's an obstacle for Rocky. He's a prop in the movie. He just happens to be some asshole that Rocky has to beat.
He's grumpy and nobody likes him and he doesn't have any friends.
He has no friends. He lives in a crappy apartment.
Yeah, he beats up everyone and he says that he'll have sex with your wife if she wants.
Yeah, seriously, what a dick. He's not the honorable man that Apollo was. And now we really start to appreciate that character and go, wow, some of these fighters, they could be upstanding citizens. And sometimes they're a fucking jerk. And so I think he's a cookie cutter villain. And I don't know that there's really anything redeeming about him.
I think the most redeeming thing about Mr. T's character is the fucking beatdown he gets at the end of the movie.
Yeah, so once again, Michael Kester excited about beatdown. Surprise there, but tell me about this.
The thing that I loved about the end of this movie is that for the first time, I wasn't going, Rocky might lose. Rocky's going to lose this one.
Yeah.
This might be the end of the road for Rocky. Because he already lost once in the film. And furthermore, the whole time, he was just kind of bobbing, weaving, going, yeah, no, I know what I'm going to do. I got this. Got this taken care of. And he was hitting Mr. T throughout the course of the fight, unlike every previous Rocky boxing match.
Where he kind of gets his ass kicked and
he gets his ass kicked.
He might lose.
Yeah, he gets his ass kicked about 75% of the match and then does some extraordinary thing.
Yeah.
This time he was just beating the shit out of Mr. T.
Yeah.
And then at the end, he starts getting these painful hooks off. And then Mr. T goes down. And honestly, this was the first time where all I could think of was I just wanted to play Mike Tyson's Punch-Out.
Sure.
One more time.
Well, we're going to be talking about Tarantino in a second. I remember when Inglourious Bastards came out, and I think it might have been Eli Roth who talked about it as Jewish revenge porn.
Yeah.
You remember that coming out? I don't remember if that was Eli Roth or who.
Sounds like Eli Roth.
That should get credited to. But it's one of those things where you've manipulated an audience the entire time. There's one last thing standing in his way, and this guy's just you just want to see him fucking fail as hard as possible in the face. Yeah, and then at the end, there's a hamster favor. I wonder if that'll come up in the next movie.
Yeah, it might. But before we get to the hamster favor, why don't we just talk a little bit about Kill Bill?
Well, we had this beautifully laid out.
Yeah.
In the middle of the year, we're going to do both the Kill Bill movies sort of back-to-back by the weeks during some of the, let's say, lesser Rocky films. Not to say anything bad about them. Actually, to say something bad about them, they're not as good. But everybody's going to want to tune in. They're going to want to do Kill Bill. We can get away with doing two of these things back to the whole thing made sense. Now, the part that I thought really made sense for us is we've done really, with the exception of one thing, every Quentin Tarantino movie he's ever done.
Two things.
All right, and Cars Go Fast. Well, and then the other Kill Bill, which we'll do, next week. So I thought we got all the Tarantino stuff. We've covered Trunk Shots and, all these little things. The stuff we've talked about on Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction and these other movies.
Bastards and the whole shebang.
And basically every other show ever, we've talked about all this Tarantino stuff. And then we watch Kill Bill. And there's just so much more. There's always more to talk about with Tarantino. The two big things that I wanted to talk about here are the camera work and the editing. And first we can talk about the color. Haven't talked about color a lot in other Tarantino movies. Yeah. It's distinctly different in all the movies, as we'll even see next week, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And so they're all unique, but this movie as a standalone has some of the best color in fucking anything ever. I adore it. Well, and here's the thing, right? So we've talked about a little bit about color correction and color grading before. I remember Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
With the Young Frankenstein, Look at Us, We Can Do Literature Too show.
Yeah, that one. Well, and we talked about the color application a little in there, and I'm trying to move away from the term color correction and go with color grading. Mm-hmm. And in an effort to not sound pretentious, I'll explain that briefly. You're basically coloring the film. You're deciding which colors to use, what to heighten.
Right.
Color correction would imply that something is wrong. And while you do correction and you change white balance and stuff like that for continuity and for scenes to match, in a movie like this, there's a fucking colorist. There is a person who is taking this movie as if the original colors weren't even there and deciding what to heighten, in each frame. And that's an important job art direction wise. And so I like color grading better, and I'm going to use that. And I apologize for every time from now on when I sound like an art jerk, but there's my justification.
All right.
What's great about Kill Bill is that each scene is completely distinct. In the hospital alone, I mean, it's not to say that the entire hospital is colored one way, but there's the white-red stuff in the beginning with Daryl Hannah's character. There's the Hostel meets John Carpenter kind of
Right.
when they're actually in that dirty, grungy room.
Right.
You know, to hammer that in from an artistic side with the necessary feeling there is you want to make this feel gross. You want this to be a room, unlike the hallway or the waiting room, where a character could throw a hairy Vaseline canister at another character and you would go, wow, that deserves some rape revenge right there. You're storytelling through color.
Yeah.
But then California Mountain Snake calls or gets a phone call from Bill, and then we see where Bill's hanging out. Don't see his face through the entire movie. Super cool. And it's all those brown, golden, you know, shiny sword Asian colors.
Sure.
Completely different environment, obviously, from what we're doing, you know, in here in the hospital. And then, you know, you get out of the building and there's that bright colored pussy wagon, the yellows and the pinks. You have, at the end of the movie, the blood on the snow, which I know I'd said this at some point in our history somewhere, but an image not exploited nearly enough. Red blood, white snow. I probably mentioned it on Sex and Fury. Red blood, white snow. It just needs to happen more. And this is something that takes a great deal of care, not just from the colorist, not the person sitting there doing that grading, but also from the set design. You know, they're not actually removing and replacing colors. When you're looking at those different sets, they are constructed so that the color makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, you could tweak those colors in post, and usually I enjoy more subtle color grading, but the colors in here are extremely saturated. They're very, very vibrant, and the set design lends itself to those. There are always complementary colors in, you know, all the scenes. There's never a conflicting color hiding away in a set somewhere. So, you know, those things have been scanned meticulously to root out anything that doesn't agree. It's as if every single scene could come out of some design catalog. They're really, really gorgeous sets, and they make the movie look gorgeous in post, too. You know, and the Hattori Hanzo one's another good one, where, you know, she goes upstairs, there's all the different swords. There's a lot of different colors for those swords, but they all seem to go, you know, with one another. When she goes to the city, too, you know, they're driving through the city, and we have... I mean, it's really, at that point, it's a rainbow of colors, but we're making sure they're all pretty stark, agreeable colors. It looks like a fucking rainbow. And then the movie's use of pure whites when it needs something that's kind of a neutral color to go with that very sun-driven sort of temperature. But the color's not the only Tarantino thing. I wanted to cover the camera work, too. Specifically, the long take, which when we first started discussing long takes, it was either Touch of Evil or maybe Serenity. I remember that great Joss Whedon, you know, they're first in the ship, and they kind of, you know, they give the illusion. It's always the illusion of a long take. Maybe not here, I don't know. But I brought up that a lot of time long takes are just for show, and that's all they're trying to do. And that's probably all they're trying to do here, but I think that's reason enough, just for style. I'm not going to fault anybody for just showing off, especially Quentin Tarantino.
Right.
So he has this overhead shot. You know, when they're going around, I'm just going to call it the Asian dance party. But what is that place?
I don't know.
It's some kind of
Oren Ishii's dojo.
Yeah, it's the 5, 6, 7, 8s are playing. It's some kind of club thing. I don't know. And there's a lot more overhead shots in this movie than in the usual Tarantino stuff. But it's a long, incredibly showy take that moves, you know, over different rooms and through different rooms, all set to music. It's showing how this entire place operates. And you get a real sense of what the layout of this place looks like. So later, when it's completely fucking trashed, you see, you know, you really get a sense of that devastation.
Right.
So that one other thing then, briefly, if I said the name Sally Menke, who is that?
That's Quentin Tarantino's late editor.
Okay, late editor. Yeah. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, she edited every single Quentin Tarantino movie. She's essentially responsible for a large percentage of what makes Quentin Tarantino films. And not too long ago, she passed away.
Yeah, I think it was September 2010, I think. So, you know, I don't even want to give myself credit for knowing any of this, because I just found this out. I was not aware that Quentin Tarantino had a single editor that he used. I didn't know who Sally Menke was. So she did editing on all the films up to Inglourious Basterds, up to and including Inglourious Basterds. And she was working on something when she died, or I think she finished it, but most of her work is with Quentin Tarantino. And we've talked a lot previously how Robert Rodriguez collaborates with Tarantino on stuff.
Sure.
But Tarantino himself once said that she was his only true collaborator. She was the only other person who you could count as, you know, Tarantino and this person. Yeah, exactly that. Some people have composers they always work with. Some people have cinematographers they always work with. Some people have Robert Rodriguez's they always work with. But the only true person who always worked with Quentin Tarantino was Sally. And her editing is fucking phenomenal. Her timing is great. This movie itself is one of my favorite examples of editing in anything ever. I mean, it's an extremely tight movie. Every shot is a brief, very fulfilling action. And, you know, we can talk about that more as we get into some of the cool Asian stuff. But I think, you know, if we're going to talk action, we have to go back to, as you said earlier, some of our Asian homework.
Yeah, so we have a lot of these very brutal, very violent, blood squirting everywhere, fighting scenes that are not typical of Quentin Tarantino, but are certainly typical of Shogun Assassin and Sex and Fury. This is where we kind of get this weird... This is the first shift in the project, right? This is where we see how an American has seen these Eastern films.
Sure.
And taken those different ideas in varying degrees and put them to use for an American audience. We see the same level of violence, maybe a little bit hyper stylized version of the violence because it's 30 years past these other films.
Well, also, and if I could just complain for one moment, hyper stylized at the end in black and white because of the censor board.
Right.
So, you know, the whole bloody affair, the complete Tarantino Kill Bill, how it was meant to be seen, blah, 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 over 4 hour thing. No color censoring in that, but had to change the color to the black and white specifically because, I don't know, too much red makes audiences...
Too much red means too much
people.
Violence, I guess.
Yeah, awful, awful. But I want to say this whole crew of people handled that really well.
Sure.
To choose to make that a style rather than to edit around it.
Right.
A very good decision.
Yeah, we get... I mean, it's the violence. The violence transcends from the original Japanese films that we started covering with the first two Rocky movies. And on top of that, we also get these really oversaturated characters who have everybody's got heavy lines and it's all very heavy-handed and people are taking everything very seriously and very personally, and it almost turns... You get a lot of the mentality of the protagonists from those other films.
Yeah.
With the big heavy heroes who are out for revenge and out for blood. And everybody speaks with these lines of really, really deep, thick dialogue. And everyone is serious as fucking hell.
Yeah, the first time you get that is Vernita Green.
Right.
Well, I guess the first time you get it's in the fucking intro. But Green is one of this assassin force that, you know, when we looked at Pulp Fiction, almost sounded like Uma Thurman's character's idea for a show.
Yeah.
But she shows up at that house and her and Green just fucking destroy the entire place. Just like the, you know, the end scene.
Sure.
It's not nearly as much blood, but there is a lot of collateral damage there.
Right.
And that's where you start to get that tight editing and that, you know, Quentin Tarantino doing action.
Sure.
In a way that he's never done action before.
And a lot of what Quentin Tarantino does, and a lot of the reason that he's part of this Asian project here, is because of this thing that Quentin Tarantino may or may not be notable for, but something that he is certainly responsible for.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess there's two ways of looking at it. The negative way to put it is plagiarizing and stealing really good ideas and pretending he came up with them.
Cynicism, fuck that. What's the more optimistic way? Let's just do that one.
I would say probably something along the lines of collecting the best things film has ever done and putting them in an original story.
Okay, so this is a conversation we really do need to have, right?
And I think that this is why Kill Bill ended up in here, is because Quentin Tarantino saw these films, other films we didn't cover but talked about, Lady Snowblood, Master of the Flying Guillotine was another one we might have done, films we saw on the show, the two Argento movies, specifically opera.
Yeah, so we've experienced this firsthand here, and now I guess everybody listening to this show, if you're following along, or if you happen to have seen the Argento ones, then you might have had this moment too. Now, for the longest of time, and I remember right about when Kill Bill came out, that's when I became aware that other people were saying he's just stealing these scenes. And I love Kill Bill. It's one of my favorites, so I just kind of plugged my ears until recently. And then we started watching stuff for the show, and I got interested in, okay, I'm not so worried about if he's stealing or artistically borrowing or whatever, but what are these movies? Where is this stuff coming from? Would I be interested to see this stuff? And the thing that I was really curious to know, just about myself, I guess, is would I feel, you know, as I got more acquainted with these films, cheated?
Yeah.
Would I feel, a lot of people kind of turn their nose up at Kill Bill and say, or at Tarantino in general, I guess, and say, oh, these things are stolen from these other
plagiarized,
places.
too many references, that kind
Right.
of. I mean, but the thing is that Tarantino is a film child of the 70s.
Sure.
And if you're going to be somebody like that, if you're going to be someone that watches so many fucking movies, it's better to just straight up acknowledge that you're getting your inspiration from shit you've seen before.
Sure.
Because let's be honest, there are no more original ideas.
Well, and I always remember being turned off by the people who said that about those people, not about Quentin Tarantino. To kind of stick your nose up and say, oh, well, that was originally here.
Sure.
I know about this movie. That's the very kind of pretension we're attempting to fight with this show. And
sure.
I was kind of interested, would I fall prey to that? And so there's this moment, you and I have seen a lot of these other things. We're prepared for them. But as we're watching this, when the gun is fired and the bullet comes down the chamber, you and I sat here on this show and described that very scene, it would seem, in a movie by Dario Argento called Opera.
It was exactly the same.
We both kind of turned to each other and had that reaction. Didn't we Opera?
Yeah, it was no question. It's not a wow, what a similar idea. It was the angle of the trajectory of the bullet passing through the chamber was the same. The way the bullet came out of the barrel was exactly the same as the bullet coming through the peephole in Opera.
Now, we talked about there being a lot of different movements to that whole scene. I don't want to go back over it now and potentially spoil any of that stuff, but there were just a lot of different actions from that connected really well, and this is only one small piece of it.
Sure.
However, as the words opera were coming out of your mouth, in my head, I was pushing that back and saying, that looks like some kind of weird stock footage that maybe I have seen at some point.
Right.
But so now we have a quick case study of this. I mean,
Sure.
How did that make you feel, identifying this as opera?
Well, that one for me, that felt a little bit unfair.
Sure.
There are certain things, the whistling in the hallway, basically all the Lady Snowblood stuff that I'm okay with. I'm all right knowing that you got inspiration, you thought this was cool, you wanted your characters to be in the same thing.
Sure.
Something like using the exact way a bullet was fired seems a little bit cheap, but to be honest, in the grand scale of things, I'd much rather people see it at all.
Well, and even if Tarantino's greatest detractors were correct, and he had not a single original thought, but only copied and pasted scenes out of other movies into his own, there still needs to be somebody going around and doing that. I think that is actually commendable just in that action itself. Sure. And the fact that he's so open about it, and he talks about, every time you see Tarantino's greatest film list, I know we brought that up on a previous show, there's references to all that stuff everywhere. And in the rare occasion where he sits down and talk, you see him on Charlie Rose a lot, where he'll actually sit down and have a conversation about his movies. And he talks a lot about the inspirations, what he was trying to do, where he was pulling stuff from. And so, I had that immediate reaction too, though. I said to myself, wow, I don't know if I felt rewarded or cheated but I recognized that very quickly, that I didn't want to be one of those people running around going, oh, you guys don't even know what this is from. This is from Deep Red. This is this old movie that I've seen and you haven't. So I did have to actively fight that just because I didn't want to sound like a douchebag.
But there's a lot of things that Tarantino's doing with Kill Bill that evolve the same genre that we're talking about with this Rocky Asia project. And it's a lot of the hyper stylized super violence, a lot of these characters that are just really, really comic book-esque, and everybody's just kind of this person. O-Ren Ishii is probably the second most perfect example for what we'll see when we take Tarantino's films back east, when we do the third leg of this whole project.
Sure.
But I think the most obvious character that seems like Japan latched onto and then expanded is Go-Go.
With all the words you're using, I just kept thinking you were going to make an Ichi the Killer reference. And I just, as soon as you said expanded, in my head, I know where he's going with this. I can't finish your sentences. That was great too, by the way, just while we're on that, to see that awful computer animated scene from Ichi, whether it was inspiration or coincidental, which a lot of this shit's coincidental too.
Sometimes people get cut in half. And
to see it done with a real person,
Yeah.
or what at least looks like a real person and not computers. I'm glad someone fixed that scene. I wish I could just redub that then into Ichi the Killer. It's amazing. We weren't even planning Ichi the Killer as a thing Tarantino would blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one other thing before we move on to Go-Go, and I'm dying to talk about that too, but I want to say on this subject, just so we can close the book on artistic borrowing here, you and I have done, let's call it extremely extensive research on the things that were borrowed and what have you.
Sure.
And the ones that we noticed in the film from doing, just watching movies on double feature and some of the, I know you've seen more of the Asian stuff than I have. Those references that we caught were far more horrifying than most of the things that people throw out there.
Sure.
Because watching this again recently for the show, my heart sank a little bit. I got a little scared. I started thinking, wow, if I caught these things, what if this entire movie is frame for frame stolen from somewhere else?
Because we both feel like we haven't even scratched the surface on film. So the references that we got in Kill Bill, at least for me, I kept thinking, if I got these, what are the deeper ones that I'm completely oblivious to?
And the reality, after exhaustively looking these up, is the rest of them aren't that bad. Or at least for us. We caught these ones that seem fairly obvious. Stuff like the Argento ones or whatever.
Sure.
And just, they freaked us out a little bit. But the other ones are so slight and so small and mostly coincidental and not something that I would ever worry about.
Yeah.
So back to Go-Go. Back to Japan more broadly. Japan is so fucking cool.
Yeah.
This movie has a coolness factor that I don't even know where to put it on the scale.
Yeah, I agree with you completely.
That's the one thing that I think Kill Bill Volume 1 will always have in a far different way than Volume 2.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we'll get into all the Volume 2 stuff and a lot of the things we can't even fucking fit into this episode in the next one. But the amount of Japanese cool is so overwhelming. It's the anime scene, it's the Asian posse. Just having a fucking Asian posse. Honestly, what is cooler
really
than...
hung up on the Asian posse.
I would love to have an Asian posse. Just having a half Asian producer does not do it for us. We need an entire Asian posse.
You need an Asian... I'm not going to get hung up on the Asian posse.
You can be part of my Asian posse,
I prefer
man. Don't
my
even worry
posse
about it.
to speak a language I understand.
Yeah, that would be a little terrifying, I guess, an entire posse. But, the scenes where they're ordering pizzas, and that just looks so... I want to do that. I want to hang out with 88 people and just make sex jokes and eat pizza and order around Charlie Brown. It is so fucking cool. The 5, 6, 7, 8s are so cool. That as far as Tarantino goes with found music, man, it doesn't get a lot better than that for me. The soundtrack he assembled for this movie, and I know, as we were covering other things like Team America, we brought this up a lot, but nearly every piece of music he put together for this, that are all just tracks he kind of collected from everywhere else, have become huge, huge successes way after the fact. Nobody even knew who the 5, 6, 7, 8s were. He just kind of plucked them out of nowhere. And their kind of garagey cover outfit, that whole thing is great. Them in the movie, also great. But showing up in, fucking phone commercials and car commercials, a lot of commercials spoofed in other films, used all over the place. The coolest thing, hands down, though, is, you were right, Go-Go.
Yeah.
We talked about this actor before.
Yeah.
What movie was that?
She was in Battle Royale way back.
Yep, Battle Royale, a movie that I'd only seen because I found out this actor. I saw Kill Bill the first time. I thought Go-Go, that's where it's at. And
that's a thing I need to see more of.
Right.
And you will.
Thank you. Fucking excited. The costume design for that character, the weapon for that character, the fight. I mean... Oren getting driven around by somebody who's probably not even old enough to drive that car. I love
learner's permit, maybe
Asian schoolgirl chauffeur. Leading this group of just badass, kids. It's a gang. It's a gang in the most true sense. It's fucking kids. But that fight at the end, there's something amazing. This gets back to the editing, but again, in every edit, there is something jaw dropping. It's I haven't seen anything like it since we did the first 2 minutes of Scott Pilgrim. Consistently, every single time the camera moves, every time it cuts from one thing to another, there's just an extremely aesthetically pleasing in a visceral sense.
Sure.
Something smacks through somewhere, it makes the sound of something. We're getting a lot of those Asian sounds.
Oh yeah,
that Hong Kong cinema kind of thing. Boards breaking apart, bowling pins, people falling on their ass. The score cuts out from that. And then the spiky nails in the foot. and the blood from the eyes,
squirting,
and the chain falling, the collapsing. I mean, you can go back through that scene.
Mute your TV and watch it again, and you won't even know half of the shit that's going on, let alone feel the same way you feel.
Yeah, it's so much of that is owed to the sound, but I guess the composition of the frames too. You know, that frame of her eyes bleeding, or of her head tilting back with that fucking board stuck in it. Print them out, hang them on your wall. And then, you know, our sex and fury kind of ending there.
Yeah.
The one last thing we should sort of address on this episode, rather than next one, I suppose, is dividing the movie in half.
Yeah.
Now, when this movie came out, I was under the assumption that it was always intended to be in 2 parts. But the more I learn about it, the more it sounds like they made a 4-hour-long movie and then cut it in half because they fucking had to.
Because you can't have a 4-hour movie in theaters unless you're Peter Jackson.
But I really like a lot of people feel cheated about it. They have to pay twice as much money or whatever. Fuck that. I am so excited by this.
Yeah, I'm always down. I mean, it should be no secret. I'm down for sequels.
Well, and I mean, I like the idea of thinking about it as one movie.
Yeah.
I feel like it is really 2 movies, and maybe we'll figure that out next time when we do Kill Bill 2.
Yeah.
Or Part 2, I guess. But I like the cliffhanger ending. I like that it feels like a TV show.
I like that it's called Kill Bill and you never see Bill.
Yeah, that's great too. You know, and then a couple months later, Part 2 comes out in theaters. It's really not that long of a wait. And so you're excited about the thing.
Mm-hmm.
You want to see how the whole thing concludes. And it's a couple of months and you talk about it. It's still fresh in your mind.
Kill Bill 2 probably came out in theaters around the same time they pulled the Kill Bill 1 reels.
Yeah, not too far after that. And I'm sure you could still find Kill Bill 1 in theaters when Kill Bill 2 came out. So you were just coming off of your Kill Bill high. It hadn't been so long that you either forgot or lost interest.
You didn't need a recap of the last fight in slow motion.
Yeah, it's just perfect timing. The whole thing was great. To this day, I think Kill Bill is still, I mean, I would chalk it up as one of the coolest fucking things I've ever seen. It just hits all the just weird aesthetics and character things and style. All of that stuff I really love is in Kill Bill. And you know what, to be honest with you, this is the most excited I have ever been for this Asian extreme whatever idea.
It only gets cooler when we head back over to the Orient.
I'm in this great place that I'm sure would make Tarantino so proud, where what I want to do as soon as our show finishes is watch more of these things.
Yeah.
I am dying to see, you know, what Asian filmmakers have done as a reaction to Kill Bill or coincidentally after Kill Bill. I just want more things like this. I want to move this further into another direction. But before we get to that, we should talk about what we're doing next time, which is the second half of Kill Bill.
Right.
We have a website, doublefeatureshow.com. Of course, goes right with the email address, doublefeatureshow@gmail.com. While I feel like we did a pretty good job covering this, always room for corrections and people who have snobby Tarantino things to say and people who don't like the Asian adventure and are going to you get the show for free, by the way. Your expectation should be 0 every single week. You should expect no show to come out, and then when you get one, you should be ecstatic. But you know what? We're not above criticism or above feedback.
Or above putting shows out weekly.
Yeah, apparently we can't stop doing that either.
So for the next one, we're just gonna chug right along on this shit. We're gonna do Rocky 4, Kill Bill 2, get the Kill Bills clumped together and out of the way for all of you people that are only in this for the Tarantino.
You got it. You got both of them kind of back-to-back, sort of.
As back-to-back as we're willing to do.
I would say at least more back-to-back than other scenarios we could have. Oh, man, there's so many. Can we just take a second to be thankful for the disasters that were averted by this much smaller, much more fun disaster?
Watch more fucking film.
Bye.